Breakthrough technology demands strategy, capital, and long-term vision. Mr. Murali Ranganathan operates at that intersection as CVP Finance and CFO Semiconductors at Tata Electronics. He drives large-scale capital deployment in one of the most strategic sectors of our time. With over 20 years of global experience in finance and corporate strategy, he plays a key role in establishing India's first integrated semiconductor venture, spanning foundry, assembly and test, and design services. He leads long-term financial architecture, capital allocation, governmental incentive structuring, and the creation of a world-class semiconductor finance organization. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Murali Ranganathan.
Thank you. Am I audible?
You can come a bit closer. Yeah.
Am I audible? First of all, Chairman Dr. Himanshu Rai, President Kandelwal, my dear friend and chairperson for the session, Mr. Pramod Bakliwal, is my friend for 40 years, distinguished guests. It's a great honor to be addressing this gathering on a topic that is very close to my heart, that is semiconductors. And before I go there, I just want to say thanks to the wonderful hospitality of the city of Indore and the IMA. This is my first time here, and believe you have a gem. It's a hidden gem. I never knew about the city. Thank you very much. And with that, let's get started. So semiconductors have been around for nearly 50 years. But the last 5-7 years, there has been a lot of talk about semiconductors and a lot of hype, and anywhere you turn to, there's talk about this technology. Why so? So let's start there. I mean, today, names like NVIDIA and Micron are household names. And this seems to have happened all of a sudden. But it is not really so. It was all in the making. So first and foremost, if I think about semiconductors, and sorry, I have a bunch of charts and slides. With my engineering background and finance, it will be a disservice not to show some data. And why this has happened is semiconductors are the things that power data, which is the oil for the 21st century. So if you look at last century, oil was what dictated the growth of all of the economies. Countries went and were looking for sources of oil, and it became a resource of very strategic importance. Small countries in the Middle East gained outsized importance than their size or the value on the global economy. Similarly, if you look at today, look at what we talk about. If you look at I opened the newspaper, South Indian newspaper, The Hindu, and the topic in recent days, the top editorial was on rare earth metals. Would you have imagined just a few years ago that you'd be talking about rare earth metals? And the countries that take significant importance these days are small countries like Taiwan and South Korea. Why? Because they make the most semiconductors. So data is the oil for the 21st century, and semiconductors are those refineries that make them possible. Every piece of data, that it has to be computed, has to be moved, has to be stored, has to be transmitted, has to happen through semiconductors. Now, if you look at the chart, just to put this in context, the chart on the left shows the world revenues of semiconductors, which is supposed to hit $1 trillion this year. Just put that in context. It's one of the largest product devices, if not within the top 3, it's within the top 5. And it's, over the course of this century, just in a matter of 10, 20 years, it will become the top product category. And if you look closely, some of the things that power it, the big bar, the big blue bar on the left shows the data center driven data that is creating demand for semiconductors. All the information that we use every day, we transmit, all of it is exponentially creating amounts of need for semiconductors to be to process all the data, to get intelligence out of it. So out of this huge market, there are several new applications that haven't even shown up. Just, I forgot to mention that just in this year, generative AI-based semiconductor demand will top $500 billion. It's a mind-boggling figure, and it's just expected to increase. Every day I look at it, it just only keeps increasing because the use cases and the applications that they go in service, it's only, they are being discovered as we speak. And then there are more applications, things like humanoids, your glasses, Google Glass type devices. All of these things are going to drive more and more need for semiconductors. Now, if you look at the other chart, which is the Indian demand for semiconductors, it looks small in comparison. It's about 6% of the overall global semiconductor demand. So modest by comparison, but it is going to increase. Many of these applications that I talked about have not shown up in the forecast, and when they do, it will substantially increase. Now, the most important aspect of it is none of these semiconductors today are made in India. And if you think this is something that is as important as oil was for the last century, don't you think we need to have some control or some handle on these products? And that's the reason why the Indian Semiconductor Initiative and all these actions that have been taken in the last few years have gained importance. Now, it is not just economics. There are many other things at play. The recent global geopolitical tensions that have cropped up, where countries are keeping their own sources of either rarer metals, are extremely putting regulations on transfer of these extremely complicated and advanced machines called extreme ultraviolet machines out of the hands of certain other countries, or putting regulatory barriers on AI chips and so on. These these are manifestations of geopolitical tension, right? So because if this is a critical resource, then all of the countries are trying to make sure that they have, not only what they need, but they keep it away from their competitors. The second thing is supply chain vulnerabilities. COVID exposed the first instance of supply chain vulnerability where people could not get cars delivered. Cars that are, several tens of thousands of dollars for a single $1 chip, right? It's mind-boggling because they couldn't get their hands on the chips because supply chains were either broken, or countries wanted to keep, or companies wanted to keep the supply of chips to themselves. So across the globe, there is concerted action by both companies as well as countries to have a much more resilient supply chain, want to have their own supply chain. I'll show you some more data in coming slides on what this is transformed into across the globe. Third, AI, the importance, we talk about AI in a more colloquial form on the consumer applications and so on. But AI is going to be in every single aspect of what we do, whether it is in the devices and the things we do every day, or in defense strategies that countries employ against other countries. All of these things are already utilizing the capability of AI, and therefore, this has become, this is going to dictate, AI is going to dictate not only how the future economy and economics of the globe is going to be, but also the strategic power shift between countries, whether it is military or other aspects of the overall global functioning. And at the bottom of what makes AI possible, why wasn't AI possible just a few years ago? It is because of the capabilities of semiconductors. It is the GPU technology from NVIDIA. It is the high bandwidth memory technology from the memory companies like Micron. That is what make AI possible. So therefore, the importance of semiconductors just got increased that much more. Finally, because of all these actions, governments are intervening in a big way, offering subsidies and incentives to promote investment in their own countries to drive semiconductor capabilities, whether it is manufacturing facilities or R&D capability and so on. So let's take a step back. This is the context of the semiconductor industry. Let me tell you a few things that may or may not be well known about this industry. It is highly capital intensive. One of the most highly capital and R&D incentive industries in the world. So if you look at the charts on the top, maybe they are a little small, 22% of revenue gets reinvested in R&D on an average. 26% of revenues is plowed back into capital investment every year in the industry. So if you take a step back, nearly 50% of revenues have to be reinvested either in technology, in R&D, or in capital investments to drive this industry. What this means is scale is immensely important. Immensely important. Without scale, there are many other aspects also. Without scale, you won't get the cost to be competitive. Without scale, you won't have the reach of the kinds of applications you can touch, and therefore, scale is extremely important. Now look at the other chart. The other chart is basically capital investment by different countries in the next 10 years that is being projected by various countries. And it shows a chart of countries on the top or in the x-axis and headquarters location or the companies on the y-axis. So you can see the biggest bars are Taiwan and the United States, roughly a third. But the colors show that a few countries are investing a lot. This is, by the way, this is $2.3 trillion in the next 10 years, which is more than 3 times than what was in the last 10 years, $760 billion or so. So huge amounts of capital is going in because of what I showed you earlier, that the demand and the need and the supply chain resilience, all of these things. Now, if you look at India, it's in the last bar and to the very bottom, the gray section at the very bottom. Looks small in comparison, but we have to start somewhere. It is still a big investment, and I'll show you in a minute what this investment is, but we have to start somewhere, and we are getting started. Now, this is all a lot of colorful charts, and I don't want to bore you with more data, but I wanted to highlight a couple of interesting things here. So the chart on the top shows basically wafer, which is the silicon wafer production across the globe, manifested in the various colors, and the different technologies. So the top one is DRAM, which is a memory technology, NAND, which is a memory technology, and then there are various logic, which is logic is the brains of the brain chip, if you will, right? The computing CPUs and GPUs. And then you have other devices. The interesting thing you find is no one color dominates. And it is interesting that the countries, so the colors are represented by the countries. The countries that dominate in memory don't dominate in logic. The countries that dominate in even the higher advanced logic do not dominate in the mature logic. What this means is, what is fascinating about this industry is that if you are successful in one domain, it is not guaranteed that you will be successful even in the adjacent domain. It is so, the level of focus is so important. The other thing this points out is that we need to be very careful on where we place our bets and focus, because unless you focus, unless you utilize that scale, it is very difficult eventually to be sustainable. What the other two charts show similar trends for different classes. One is for equipment, and another one is for materials, but it shows the same pattern that certain countries do not dominate across the spectrum. They dominate specific segments, and therefore if you look at a value chain of semiconductors from end to end, what you will find is there are lots of points of concentration, which is also the reason why the supply chain vulnerabilities were caused, and which is why the entire world is now trying to drive some more resilience and a much more balanced supply chain. But this also points out that unless you have the focus and the efficiency, profitability can be very challenging. This is just a chart to show the level of investment that is going on across the globe from various countries. I'll just hit a couple of key points. This is from 2020 to 2024, roughly $300 billion of incentives across various governments. And the incentives are very critical. That's a topic for another day. Without incentives, it's very difficult to get started, especially in a greenfield country like India. These are extremely essential. But just the other key point here is, within the last 4 years in this horizon, nearly 100 plus manufacturing related investments have gone on across the globe in a massive scale. So not only are we getting big into semiconductors, so are the other countries, because of all the things I mentioned earlier. Now let's talk about the Indian investment profile, or the Indian Semiconductor Mission, what they are doing. So the first stage, ISM 1.0, it's about an $18 billion investment across 5 entities. I am from Tata. Tata is in 2 of these projects. The semiconductor fab, which is the biggest one, which is about $11 billion of the $18 billion. By the way, this is total invested dollars, not the subsidy from the government. And then, we are also starting a assembly and test facility in Assam. And then we have other of our industry peers, Micron, CG Power, and Keynes, starting OSAT facilities. Micron is about to break. Micron is my former employer and is about to break ground either this week or next week. So it will be the first time a semiconductor chip will be rolling out of India, a big accomplishment. So India is putting a lot of investment, but as I showed you in the earlier chart, it still is limited in scope. So what does all of this mean? There are a few takeaways. One, we have to make big bets. At the same time, we have to have very sharp focus, because it is very tempting to go invest in multiple different areas. That will not work out. So as a finance guy, I can tell you that unless we do both, the big bets as well as that sharp focus in specific areas, we are not going to win. Second, co-opetition, as the word goes, and partnerships. We can't, it is impossible at this stage to fight in a brute force competition with China or other countries. There has to be a lot of cooperation. At Tata, we have formed several MOUs with large partners such as Intel and Qualcomm and Bosch and so on. This sort of mindset, early on today we heard about collaboration. This is extremely critical in order for us to succeed. Third, relentless innovation. What do I mean by that? Of course, the core technology, there is a lot of innovation, but we have to innovate in all areas, such as business models, manufacturing, and so on. And last but not the least, execution is key. As Maurice Chang, the founder of TSMC, once said, strategy without execution is, I'm not remembering the exact phrase, but he said basically, if you don't have a strategy, it is aimless. But if you don't have execution with a strategy, it is useless. So execute, execute, execute at all costs. A quick overview of Tata Electronics. We started with EMS, or Electronic Manufacturing Services, making iPhones through an acquisition, and then we built our own capability. This is in the south, in the Karnataka, Tamil Nadu belt. After that, we broke ground in 2024 on our assembly and test. This is in Jagi Road, Assam, and this construction is going on very nicely. And this would be the first for us in the semiconductor foray. Then is the massive fab project in Dholera, Gujarat. This is the $11 billion investment. Again, construction going on here in full speed. We have a lot of partnerships. We have already announced some customer partnerships as well. And finally, we are in the stealth with design services. We are doing some design work, first for our own products or for our customers' products. Eventually, we'll start offering this broadly to customers. So this is Tata Electronics. I will quickly go through this, just to hit the point that Tatas are extremely suited for this kind of pioneering work. Everybody knows what they have done in many other industries. So we are extremely suited for this, and that's the only reason I moved from the States after 30 years, because it was Tata. And we can confidently trust Tata will take us through it. There are a lot of other support, both from government and other institutions in building the ecosystem and so on. But we are well on our way. So last but not least, I'll just take 30 more seconds to finish this. What are the vectors of innovation? First and foremost is core technology. There have been many cases in the industry where companies and countries that started but didn't have ownership of the core technology eventually became unsustainable. So core technology is important. We are starting with a partnership, but eventually our goal will be to develop our own technology, which is already on the way. Next, we have to have a lot of innovation across the board, whether it is business models or ecosystem, how we develop this. We have to do it the Indian way, but also do it the global way, and make sure that we bring in innovation so that we can do this much faster than what the other countries in the world had the time luxury to do. Manufacturing innovation. At the end of the day, semiconductors can be razor-thin margins if you're not achieving the kind of scale. So cost is king. So in order for us to hit these costs, we have to innovate in our manufacturing. India has a long legacy of frugality and resourcefulness. If we can take that and blend it with some process robustness, that would be our key for driving cost competitiveness. last but not the least, you know, we have to also think about, from a workforce standpoint, we are doing a lot of holistic planning in an innovative way, in different types of skill development in order to drive innovation. So all of these is what is needed for us to have a Swadeshi future in semiconductors. Thank you.